Blog Talk Radio.
Mr. Taz Taylor here with me tonight. I believe we'll have Ms. Lee, who may be in the studio. Is this Taz?
I should be.
Oh, Miss Lee. All right. Well, it's Taz we're waiting on. You'd think after all these years I'd have the numbers memorized, but I'm guilty. I don't even memorize the area code. I should do that, though. Waiting on Taz Taylor, I guess. Yes, big week in racing news. We're coming up to the off day. All the series will be off for Father's Day. That means everybody gets a break. All major series, like the Truck Series is off, the Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series. So,
ARCA racing. ARCA is racing Saturday night at Berlin.
Saturday night
so
at
Berlin.
And I have heard that the Flow Racing coverage of ARCA is absolutely horrible. Is that the truth, Ms. Lee? Have you been following that?
It's not the best. It really isn't. The one thing I do like is that they've got Charlie Krall announcing the races, and he's been with ARCA like forever, as long as I can remember. So that part is good. But yeah, as far as, they're not consistent with their leaderboard. The video coverage is good. But it's just not as professional as it could be. I guess I'll put it that way.
Interesting term. I can see where that could be possible, and anytime you take a step back, I guess it's always going to be noticeable. Who puts the soul? Okay. Yeah, we still don't see Taz Taylor. Miss Lee, did you catch Martin Truex's dominant win this weekend? I don't feel like that was the storyline. I really don't. I've been very super critical of Sonoma Raceway in the past and in the present day, and I really kind of felt that it was a pretty decent race. I know there were times where the cars were strung out from each other. It was almost as if I was checking Twitter to see if those the same naysayers that said we didn't need cautions and stage breaks. Looking to see if some of those names look recognizable when they started screaming, "Oh, we need stages! We need stages!" It's, I wasn't disappointed with the race, of course.
Well, I actually enjoyed them not having the stage breaks. I thought that was one of the better things that they did this weekend. Personally, I did not think that the Cup race was all that exciting. I think the truck and Xfinity races were much better, more quote-unquote entertaining, so to speak. But overall, I like road races. My local track is Mid-Ohio, where the trucks and Xfinity used to race, and now the trucks come every year.
Right.
So I'm a big road race fan. But, I think overall, I think the Cup Series was the least exciting of the three races this weekend.
Right, and some of our, quote-unquote ringers didn't really, they were never in competition. I definitely felt kind of a lackluster performance by A.J. Allmendinger. Of course, Kyle Larson seemed to have things rolling for him. But when we were discussing last week the favorites and all, you were surprised at Martin Truex 3 wins. I should have taken that as a go-to for my pick, but I missed it by a country mile. But somebody did actually pick Martin Truex Jr., didn't they?
I'm not 100% sure.
I guess we would have to ask Heather for that. He's dealing with some family issues, and of course, you're dealing with some terrible news, and of course, I think that next week we probably won't have a show, considering that we're not having any racing. So it's just may just be me and you tonight, Miss Lee, and we'll try to get through this. And as we get ready for our second half of the season, it is hard to believe that we're at the cusp of the mid-season here. It definitely doesn't feel like we're midway through the season.
No, it doesn't.
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. Normally at this point in time, which opens up the topic for first discussion, first of all, Eric Amarola, he won. Was there a truck race? There was a truck race? I missed the truck race? Who won?
Who won?
Wasn't Enfinger. He was
I'm sorry.
Right?
No, it wasn't. I'm sorry. It wasn't the trucks. It was ARCA. Because there were a couple of Xfinity drivers that went and ran the ARCA race. And then there were 8 Cup drivers that went and ran the Xfinity race.
Right. Eric Amarola being one of them. I think at one point in time, Kyle Larson had a 17-second lead on the entire field in the Xfinity race. Wow. But Eric Amarola pulls it out in the number 28, which is really cool to see.
And that was,
some of you are 28 enthusiasts.
Yeah, that was a good race and good execution by Amarola and his team.
So he kind of said something there in victory lane, and it kind of felt like a retirement statement. He said that he wanted to. First of all, he did a road race, and he sucked really bad at it, and he was like, that hurt my confidence. He said, but for some reason, when this one come up, I felt confident. I've always run good, and I needed this to finish like I'm leaving on top or something to that manner. I don't think it was very well caught, but I did kind of have this feeling that Eric Amarola feeling a sense of relief that he was still able to win, even though the time is coming to an end. And, of course, there's not been specific reports that he's retiring at the end of the season. But those are the couple of announcements that I'm surprised we haven't already heard about, including Martin Truex Jr., including the Josh Berry deal, which was supposed to have been a done deal the week of Talladega. So there's still a lot of open questions. We'll get into that with silly season and a whole lot more. Of course, Martin Truex Jr., the dominant win, potential free agent at the end of the year. But I think right now, Ms. Lee, and right now, as we smooth on into the transition here, the big three, like that's been the story, the subject for so long. Like ever since the beginning of Race Chat Live, we've always had this segment where we've referred to these basically top contenders as the big three. You know, we've done power rankings and we see kind of where each organization sits. I kind of feel like midway through the season, we could possibly kind of single point three drivers that we feel are really the lead pack of the field. But week in, week out, we go through this thing where it just seems like somebody else, it's just their turn. Like Martin Truex Jr., against all naysayers, against all beliefs, this man's won 3 races this year, Miss Lee. 3 races.
Some people might take what I'm going to say the wrong way, but I think that Martin and Sherry breaking up has given him back some focus. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think that Sherry's health issues and whatever else went on in their relationship were a distraction for him, and he doesn't have that distraction this year. So I think that plays a big part in where he's at right now and how he's performing.
In any case, taking care of somebody who is sick or has had a really tough time, whether it be through drugs or just untypical lifestyle, or cancer sucks, and we know that. I think that it takes a toll.
Yes, we do.
I had a grandfather, and he was limited to a chair. And my grandmother did everything she could to take the best of care of him. Of course, it took more than her. It took, a community of nurses and at-home visits. My grandmother definitely could not take care of him on her own. And when he passed away, it literally set a light off again in my grandmother. And, she became more active again. She became more lively. And it wasn't that she didn't mourn the loss of my grandfather. It was the burden that was left at her feet was finally cleared. And I think in some form and instance with Martin Truex Jr., what you said is exactly right. He's put some things in the closet, and he's been able to move on from that. And we've seen a new girl down in his pit stall. So, he's maybe that was his sister. We don't know. There was a picture taken. It was swarmed through the internet. Nobody really confirmed who she was, which is very odd at this point in time and with the internet. And most of the time, somebody figures out who they are. Maybe they did. I've never seen the update on it. But definitely Martin Truex Jr. seems to have found a resurgence. And the reason why I start with him is because technically he does have 3 wins this season. He has a win that was an exhibition race, and then he has 2 more wins, including this past weekend at Sonoma. There's another driver that I have circled on my calendar, and his name is William Byron. And William Byron has had the most inconsistent season but has found victory lane more times already than what he typically does in any season. So he's having a career year, but it kind of mirrors the year that Alex Bowman had a couple of years ago, where 1 week he was great, the next week he sucked. 1 week he was great, the next weekend he sucked. But the 3 wins is something to really zone in on, because those 3 wins means that he's capable of showing up at a racetrack and being fast. You don't just get 3 wins midway through the season and not have a fast race car and not be in contention for a good season. Now, I believe the third driver with 3 wins this season is Kyle Busch. And I am not sure any of us would have put Kyle Busch on the potential list of the big 3 at this point in the season when we first heard about the news. And I'm not saying that we should be completely, surprised. I'm not sure that we should be so thrown off our rocker, so to speak. But I do feel like that it was one that kind of squeaked in on us, because my concern coming into the season was, especially with the first win coming, I believe it was at California or Las Vegas, one or the other. It was very early in the season. I said, man, what if that's a little bit early peak, What if he goes into a slump for the rest of the season? And this kind of built the expectation, and then it fizzles out, and it becomes Richard Childress Racing. Well, I have been completely wrong, and I love being completely wrong. This is how storylines are created. So I'm looking at Kyle Busch, I'm looking at William Byron, I'm looking at Martin Truex Jr. Miss Lee, these guys don't fit into the big 3. There is inconsistencies amongst all 3 of these drivers. Martin Truex, not necessarily the best driver at said team. You've got Kyle Busch, who's working for a team that we don't think is competitive at all racetracks. And then we've got William Byron, who no doubt has the equipment, has never showed us before that he's been capable of being a top 3 driver. Of course, you don't think of William Byron as being the driver at the best, the best in his own organization. And of course, that would be Kyle Larson, right? Some would argue it's Chase Elliott. We know better. It's definitely probably Kyle Larson. Sorry, all you Chase Elliott fans. But there's a couple other names on this list, and I think that that's where this whole big 3 is a subject of an argument, because I don't really feel like we can pinpoint the 3 main characters going into, because Miss Lee, what I'm trying to get out here is at the end of the year, there's going to be 3 drivers that we knew were going to be there, and then there's the extra one. Well, Miss Lee, my hands are thrown in the air because I cannot, for the life of me, figure out who the hell we're going to see in Phoenix at the end of the season. So please, help me, God, figure out who the top 3 drivers are in NASCAR. The names on the list, we've got to throw in Christopher Bell. We've got to throw in Joey Logano. Of course, Kyle Larson. Tyler Reddick, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Ross Chastain for arguments. Ryan Blaney. The wins don't necessarily mean the dominance, right? Are we looking too much into the wins to try to find what's obvious, Ms. Lee?
Well, you talk about the inconsistency of William Byron. What about the inconsistency with Kyle Larson, though, too?
Very true. Very true.
He's got the wins, but he's also got some abysmal failures as well. So you can't knock out Larson, Logano, Reddick, but you're right. Who else is going to turn around and surprise us? Look at Chris Buescher, for example.
That is thank God you went there. Thank God you went there. Right. Probably the hottest driver in the Cup garage right now. Chris Buescher.
Yeah.
That blows people's fucking mind.
I love Chris Buescher. He is such a sweetheart.
for sure. So I don't know about Sweetheart, but a great guy. Love him. He should be the face of NASCAR, right? He's kind of like the Jonathan Davenport of dirt car racing. He doesn't look the typical driver part, but then when you talk to him and you see his passion and the smile, he's a good old boy that loves race cars, man.
Exactly. But yeah, so you definitely you can't count someone like him out. And like I said, he's been consistent, which many of these other drivers that we've talked about already have not been.
Right. Christopher Bell. I mean, let's look at that guy's stats for a minute. Okay. Got him a race win already this season. No stage win, 5 playoff points, right? So, I mean, not what you would typically consider a championship caliber driver, especially, a serious contender for the top 4. It doesn't fit the grade. Let's see if we can find another guy here. Of course, somebody with 7 stage wins, William Byron, right? And stage wins tell a lot about the story, right? Of what kind of season. So even in the inconsistencies of William Byron, stage wins feel like who's his crew chief? Alan Gustafson? Is that right?
Right.
No. He's got his Fugel, right? Rudy Fugel, right? It's his old crew chief. So, okay, all right. Most consistent wins, 3 wins, 7 stage wins, 17 playoff points, but also with 17 playoff points is Kyle Busch. Now, who the hell would have expected that? 17 playoff points to Kyle Busch, 12 to Kyle Larson. So your top 3 guys in playoff points kind of mimic who I suggested the top 3 being, except for Kyle Larson, with the exclusion.
Let's talk about Chastain. He made the playoffs last year.
Top 4.
So who's to say he can't do it again?
5 stage wins this year, 5 playoff points. 5 stage wins. That is, I believe, second most. Second most behind William Byron. So Ross Chastain. I feel like we got a bunch of number 4s. But I cannot zone in on even who the number 1 driver is right now in the NASCAR Cup Series. As a matter of fact, if I had to tell you, Miss Lee, right now, who I feel is the number 1 driver in the NASCAR Cup Series garage, I think it'll blow your mind. I will whisper it to you, Kyle freaking Busch.
Well, you know what? I can't necessarily disagree with you there. I think that we were all kind of holding our breath to see what was going to happen with this new team and everything. And
right.
I think we've already seen that Pop knows which side his bread's buttered on, right?
Yes, ma'am, he does. I like the way you said that.
So and I'm not quite sure if Austin has realized that yet, but maybe he has. But he can't be when he's the one that recruited him.
Right. And when Richard and Austin sit down as family, I'm very sure that they're both gracious of the decision that they made. Because if RCR had just went the direction of putting Austin Hill in the car and having Austin Dillon, maybe somebody else, a third car or whatever, I just don't feel the spark at RCR. Like, the spark was Tyler Reddick, right? Like, we felt like, holy smokes, Tyler Reddick has brought something to RCR that we've not seen in a while. This is definitely, you couldn't understand why he was going to replace Daniel Hemrick, who had only been in the car 1 year, with Tyler Reddick. And then 2 years into the Tyler Reddick, you realize really freaking quick, that's why you got rid of Hemrick. Okay, I got it. Then before you know it, Tyler's already gone. Like, already. Like, it's a done deal. Tyler Reddick headed to Toyota in 2024, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. Well, we all said on the show last year, it never happened. Tyler Reddick will never race in 2023 with RCR. It just won't happen. We were blown out of the park when Richard Childress did the unthinkable and went and hired him a real-ass driver, Kyle Busch. And then we want to stand here with a thumb up our ass wondering, is it true that he is the best race car driver in NASCAR at this time and period? And it's really hard to argue that he is not. Isn't he coming off? He finished second at Sonoma, right? This guy just finished second at Sonoma. I mean,
and he was actually rather gracious in his post-race interview. I was surprised.
The new Kyle Busch. He has every right to be more gracious in his career, because I am not sure if even Kyle Busch thought that this is a big risk for Kyle Busch. This is a big risk. I think it was a necessary risk because he really didn't have anywhere else to go, and that put his back against the wall. And that's when you have a race car driver who can start doubting himself and doubting where he's going in his career. That's why we've seen these drivers do the leap of faith and go and become team owners, because they want to control the outcome of their careers. They understand when they get to a certain point, they're no longer going to get the good equipment. They're no longer going to have active marketing teams seeking out the best interest for the driver, because now it turns into the best interest for the team. Can you get a driver who can consistently put you into the top 5 and 10 at a very low pay rate? Because the longer you've been in the Cup Series, the more expensive you become. So that is where the marketing team no longer works on your behalf, because they need to find a cheaper, faster, better you. And that happens when you work for a team. When you go and you start your own team, you can control the marketing side. You can say, I am still marketable, but you have to put forth the results. I think that we're seeing that with RFK right now. We're seeing that with Brett Keselowski. Kyle Busch was not ready to go and start his own team. I think that there was possibly some talk with maybe some potential team ownership with Colleague Racing. I do not have that to confirm, but it wasn't something that was solidified. It wasn't something that was thick enough to move, to make the move. So what he got from Childress was obviously not what he was expecting rolling into a contract year with Joe Gibbs, probable enough to still make him feel that, hey, I'm making the right move here. But at the same time, this is a big risk for Kyle Busch. Not so risky now when we're looking at it, Ms. Lee. Not so risky now. This car is compatible.
But don't discount the discussion that we had last week about the kids and potential deals for the current drivers' kids who are going to be the next generation of drivers.
Right.
You know, so I'm sure that might have factored into his decision. And I will say this, I am not a Kyle Busch fan. Never have been. But I have always respected him as a driver. And I've actually, watching him mature has made me like him as a person a little bit more, too.
Very true. We have watched Kyle Busch grow up. In NASCAR fans, has been around since the 2000s. Saw a kid They come into the racing spotlight and caused a lot of issues, whether it be wrecks, tempers, walking off. I mean, the guy literally fired himself from Hendrick Motorsports, right? Dale Jr. would have never known how fast that Hendrick horsepower was had Kyle Busch not disappeared off from his own team. Kyle Busch had a sense of, I don't know, arrogance, I guess, that rubbed people the wrong way. I feel like Kyle Busch acted out like he did because of interpersonal reasons, and it was so interpersonal that he didn't give a damn what people thought about him on the outside. And I feel like that is the drive that you have when you know that you're capable of being more than the results you have given. I feel like that all the time, Miss Lee. Like I beat myself up, and I become angry in the inside. I become ill to people around me because I'm not performing at what I feel like is my best ability. And just imagine if your career is in front of a spotlight, driving a race car, and the first thing that they do when you screw up is put a microphone in front of your face. That, you know, and I'm not taking up for Kyle Busch and all of his years of bringing us a lot of entertainment. You could probably spend the whole day just watching bloopers of Kyle Busch, but hell, I do that sometimes with Tony Stewart. Right? Anytime you need a good laugh, just go back to YouTube and listen to Tony Stewart rants. I mean, that will cheer you up just as quick as Robin Williams in New York. I promise you. Kyle will keep you very well entertained, and that's been his business for all these years. And now we're seeing the older, more mature Kyle, the Kyle who took a risk, the Kyle Busch who is now truly the number one, right? Because the one thing that I think Kyle Busch has always been competing for at Joe Gibbs Racing was who really is number one. Of course, when Tony Stewart was there, Kyle Busch wasn't number one. Denny Hamlin had been with Joe Gibbs longer than Kyle Busch. I think some people forget that. Like, Denny Hamlin was already there. So, at what point in time did Kyle Busch overshadow Denny Hamlin? Did he ever really overshadow Denny Hamlin in his own organization? I'm not sure. Does Denny Hamlin kind of feel the captain of that organization now? Probably not really. No, I would say that he's probably still a number two somehow. But I'm sure that somewhere in Kyle Busch's mind that was a battle, right? Because Denny Hamlin was here before me. And, of course, you know, Matt Kenseth's come along, and several other drivers have come along. Joey Logano, another driver that come along after Kyle Busch was there at Joe Gibbs.
And Logano was always the redheaded stepchild at Joe Gibbs too.
Right. Not the best organization, right, for a young man trying to come in with two peacocks at the head of the steer. And what I mean by peacocks is they like to stare at themselves in the mirror. And that's Denny Hamlin, that's Kyle Busch. So now Kyle Busch specifically has an organization where he can be number one. And I believe that confidence of being that he knows Richard Childress Racing is his stable. Like, because Austin Dillon's not putting forth these performances. Though very decent performances by Austin Dillon. If I may add, I mean, he just definitely not Kyle Busch performance. But for Austin Dillon, I mean, he's had a pretty consistent year. But now he can focus on driving a race car, making it fast every weekend, and giving Richard Childress something to work off of. And I'm sure the money's rolling in for ORCR right about now as well, as Kyle Busch is heating up to be the hottest driver rolling into the second half of the season. I do want to keep this rolling, though, because we not seen Denny Hamlin peak yet. Where's Chase Elliott in all this? Chase Elliott, he's made the Final Four for, I think, consistently, right, for the last 3 or 4 seasons. Am I correct? Chase Elliott, of course, is battling injuries and a suspension. Can he find his way into the playoffs with a win? He doesn't have the battle points to kind of help him out. to keep him at that top level. So Chase Elliott would literally have to go in and win multiple races in a row to make him in anywhere comparison to what these other guys are doing with the stage wins and whatnot. Do we count Kyle Larson out? Because Kyle Larson has been probably the fastest guy at the racetrack week in, week out. But there's been wrecks, there's been inconsistencies. There's Kyle Larson looks fast every weekend. Something generally comes up just as it did in the Xfinity Series that keeps Kyle Larson out of victory. Ms. Lee, is it the battle of the cows? Is it Kyle versus Kyle? That is a rival I feel like has never quite exploded. Just as the Dale versus Dale. It sounded great, and it was a really cool Daytona 500. But the Dale versus Dale never really had much more meaning outside of the Daytona 500. Are we going to see a Kyle versus a Kyle? Is there a possible potential for maybe a Kyle versus a Kyle in the playoffs? At what point in time do these two guys cross paths as maybe the best race car driver in NASCAR at this point in time?
Well, I think that Larson's team needs to work on this inconsistency that he's been dealing with. Yes, he's fast. He's fast every weekend. But, whether it's wrecks or equipment issues, there's that inconsistency there. And until they can work past that, I don't know that we can have a Kyle versus Kyle. Because Busch has been much more consistent than Larson has.
Very good point. And sometimes that's just the way it is. You can be the fastest out of the hauler every weekend and still find trouble that keeps you out of victory lane. And that seems to be the issue with Larson right now. That seems to be the ugly head that's sticking out at Hendrick Motorsports. Inconsistency. Even though at some point in time you can see all 400 Chevys running right there together, by the end of the race something's done happened. And I think that a lot of that means that we have cautions again in NASCAR. And that's, my gosh, for like 5 years, I carry the hashtag yellow caution flag. And it just seemed like, from 2015 through 2020, that was almost a curse because there was hardly any cautions anymore. And the only time that you would get a caution is if, BK23 Racing got into an oil slick or something, their own oil slick, and bashed the wall in, or Rick Ware Racing or something. That's not been the case since this new car has been brought to the playing field. We've seen the consistency in a lot more caution throughout the race period, which is, that's the side of the entertainment that I believe all of us kind of missed in the after years of the 2000 era, where there was a lot of great racing, a lot of consistency amongst the cautions, and just just a level playing field. A guy who possibly be 16th in points, 18th in points, still had a chance to go out and maybe win a couple of races in the year. We didn't see that at the end of the last generation car. It was pretty dominant between, three teams basically. But then this new car has definitely brought a lot more give and take. It's created a lot more action on the racetrack. We've seen a lot more cautions because these cars don't handle as great as what the old cars handled. And with that, you have guys who are going to have, so years. I remember Davey Allison in '92. He would go out and win a race and then wreck the next race, right? I mean, it's been well documented by Larry Mack. Just the type of season that sometimes a race car driver could have, and this year feels like that year. So you feel like at the beginning of the season or midway through the season now that Hendrick Motorsports has kind of been the dominant factor. You haven't heard much about Penske. Joe Gibbs seems to be on and off the rocks. But in reality, none of these teams have separated themselves too far from each other, which gives the Big Three impression that at this point in time, I feel like it's Kyle Busch. I feel like it's William Byron. And the third guy, I'm not really sure. Maybe Kyle Larson. Maybe you give it to Kyle Larson. Maybe you give it to Martin Truex. Martin's always been a solid driver down at the end of the race season. He really knows how to click it together at that point in time. Some of those racetracks Martinsville and all are really tracks that Martin does really well at. So we'll have to keep that one in our sight and see exactly.
And do you notice who is significantly missing from this discussion? Stewart-Haas Racing.
Of course. Yeah. And no, that's something that, you look at the caliber of drivers, Ryan Preece, Eric Amarola, and Chase Briscoe, none of those drivers really stand out amongst. Of course, it's Kevin Harvick's retirement year. It just shows how far SHR is off the grid. Really, they're a second-tier team at this point in time. When Taz Taylor presented to us that the hottest Ford team in the Cup Series right now was RFK, I think that kind of changed all of our perceptions. And as you look at the drivers' point standing, there's in the 11th place, I believe, Brad Keselowski, and in the 10th and in the 12th spot, it's Chris Buescher. So, without a doubt, RFK seems to be that number one Ford team right now going into the second half of the season. Kudos to Brad Keselowski's two-car team. I mean, look, man, Kyle Busch's success, Brad Keselowski's success, these two guys bet on themselves, and they're proving that it was a good bet. And they truly believe that they could become successful in other parts with other teams in racing, including Brad Keselowski's dib into ownership. So this will kind of roll us right into the second topic of the night, Truex and his future, the silly season, kind of the big question mark. Miss Lee, I think after this argument for 30 minutes, there's no way that we can believe Martin Truex Jr. is going to step out of a race car at the end of the year and hang up the helmet. Does that even seem fathomable point in time, Miss Lee?
No, I don't think so. With his renewed focus, I don't think he's ready to give it up yet.
And I'm with you. I would be shocked, right? I mean, maybe one win and okay, I still got a great, nice farewell win. 3 wins. 2 of them, of course, for points, 1 of them not. But still 3 wins on the season versus no wins the year before. I don't think the Bass Pro Shops is Johnny Morris is going to pull the plug on Truex right now. I do feel like maybe Joe Gibbs could go another direction. That can always be a possibility, right? Joe Gibbs has proved to us time and time again that he'll go bet on a cheaper, younger, less expensive youth. Is Martin Truex Jr. replaceable at Joe Gibbs Racing? Yes, he is replaceable because of his contract. And that seems to be the driving force of the Cup Series right now.
I don't see Bass Pro Shops going anywhere else besides Martin either.
Well, no, I don't either. I think that kind of is a combo between Martin Truex and Johnny Morris. I wouldn't see it any other way as not being a combo. Those guys have been affiliated with each other for a very long time. But we forget that Johnny Morris also has ties to Tony Stewart. And if Martin Truex Jr. went anywhere, Stewart-Haas Racing needs a guy. They need a guy. They need a guy
that's a thought.
like RFK needed Brad. They need a guy. They need a guy who can keep this organization moving in the right direction. It's hard to think right now that it's hard to say that they're not in the right direction, but mentally results so they're not in the right path. Do they go bet the farm? Of course, if they're replacing Harvick with Berry, we haven't got that confirmation yet. It's still kind of up in the air if what. But here's Truex, silly season. Johnny Morris, connections with Stewart-Haas Racing already. Martin Truex Jr., we know Joe Gibbs. Hey, could Martin Truex already be setting this up to move? Especially if he feels like Joe Gibbs could possibly cut his career before. If Joe Gibbs is offering a 1-year extension and maybe Stewart-Haas Racing is offering 2 to 3 years down the road, I feel like the move away from Sherry Pollock was a commitment to NASCAR that, hey, I'm not going home anytime soon, right? If I was going home, I went home and took care of Sherry. But instead, I want to race,
Right.
And that's probably the decision maker in that relationship. So now I'm looking for a 2 or 3 year deal that's going to keep me around. If Joe Gibbs doesn't want to offer that, now's my chance to move to Stewart-Haas Racing. How do you feel about Martin Truex Jr. going over and kind of padding the Papa Daycare type situation that kind of need a veteran at Stewart-Haas Racing?
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Kevin's leaving, Eric's possibly leaving. So, yeah, they do need an old man on the team. Somebody that's going to help give guidance to the younger drivers.
Right. I can see the 10 car. See him in the 10 car for sure. With the old Bass Pro Shots on the top. I can see that. Some other silly season notes, of course, Michael McDowell. Holy heck, man. What is going on over here at Front Row Motorsports? I mean, we could add him into the midseason surprises and disappointments for sure. But, Zane Smith, we keep hearing rumors, Zane Smith. We know Todd Gillian is over at Front Row Motorsports. Zane Smith may have ties into Stewart-Haas. We're not sure about that. We do know that Ford is directly behind Zane Smith, so Ford can kind of dictate where Zane goes and what ride kind of opens up. Nobody's saying that there's a ride open at Penske. That's also for Harrison Burton. I think Zane Smith could be a good plug-in to the 21 team. I'm not sure if Harrison Burton is going to continue behind the wheel of that car based off of performances in the last 2 years. Just don't really see the it factor. Never did really with Harrison Burton. So how far along does Penske carry, a driver that, it's time to pass the torch there. I could see Zane Smith being over at Wood Brothers. What do you think about that, Miss Lee?
I think it's a distinct possibility. Like you said, Harrison Burton hasn't done a whole lot of nothing, so, what's to keep him with that team? Maybe he goes back down to Xfinity or something. I don't know, but, he's definitely not made a big impression in the Cup Series.
Another driver that seems to be a big question mark, great plate racer, super speedway racer, Austin Hill. Does somebody go out and get a third charter? Does Richie Childress let Austin Hill go to another organization? That's a big question mark. John Hunter Nemechek, another driver who could possibly be a replacement driver for Martin Truex.
Yeah, but John, Hunter already had a chance at Cup and he didn't didn't do so hot. You know, I mean, yeah, he's doing well now, and he did well in trucks, but I'm not so sure about him.
Hey, neither am I. But and I don't think John Hunter can plug into the 19 and be have the same performance that Martin Truex Jr. is having. But any of the rookie candidates, the guy with the most experience is John Hunter Nemechek. And so if Joe Gibbs were to make that move and depart from Truex, I believe John Hunter Nemechek would be that guy based off of past. You know, you're not going to have to invest much into him. You're the fourth car, so you're going to get leftover parts anyway. You know, if he's able to perform, then that's great. If not, 2 years from now, you can move on from him and maybe plug in Sammy Smith or whatever. Maybe bring Tyler Reddick over to your organization, depending on how that works out at 2311. But one thing that I'm kind of nervous about Joe Gibbs, and I've never been much of a fan of his organization, so I don't really care. But, you know, Roush's downfall was all of his drivers basically up and leaving at one time. Greg Biffle, Matt Kenseth, Carl Edwards. You know, Roush Fenway Racing really crumbled really fast. And when you let these big-name drivers leave and you lose the credibility as an organization of veterans and leadership and fortitude, I feel like the sponsors, that's the first thing they notice. Like, the organization's thinning out, and they don't want to put as much money towards it. So Joe Gibbs, he has a lot on his plate right now. A lot of things going on in Joe Gibbs Racing, of course, that we already know about. It is very critical at this point in time to have your investors seeing you moving in the right direction. We've heard maybe leaving the sport soon. Denny Hamlin may be leaving the organization soon. A lot of question marks within the Joe Gibbs camp. And this could be a big silly season for the Joe Gibbs camp, especially if they're not able to zone in on some future talent. This is an organization, TRD program, that has had unimaginable amount of talent roll through it. It's hard to believe that we're at a point now to where we're saying, okay, who do we plug into here, right? If we were to lose Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex in the same year, who would go into those cars? For the first time in TRD existence, or at least in the last 10 years, we don't know who would go in those cars. We don't even have an idea. Sammy Smith, he's not ready. John Hunter, he's somebody given the chance. But yeah, we've watched guys like, you know, Noah Gragson, Christopher Bell, Eric Jones, Harrison Burton. The list goes on and on of drivers that have come through the TRD organization. Any other big thoughts that you have maybe on this silly season and where drivers can go? I would love to see Michael McDowell wind up in the 19 car at Joe Gibbs Racing. Like, that would be the coolest thing in the whole world, to see a guy like Michael McDowell, who has put in his work over the years, get a great ride. So, Miss Lee, do you see that happening? Is that a possibility? What if Michael McDowell went to Stuart Haas Racing? Would that be, at what point in time can we elevate the Daytona 500 champion, Michael McDowell? Or is he elevatable?
I think Michael McDowell definitely is an elevatable driver, but I want to backtrack just a little bit to the whole JGR thing. I think that coach's focus has totally been on fast-tracking Ty up to Cup, and I don't know that he has thought about the kind of questions that you have raised. I think his focus has all been on Ty and not what does he do when he loses his two big names. Because we all know Denny is either going to retire as a driver or go drive for his own team. And like you said, Truex is in a contract here, so and I'm just not sure that the Gibbs organization has looked beyond doing what they had to do to get Ty up there.
And that has left a void in the organization. And it makes the future uncertain because I'm just not sure if Corey Hines or some of these other younger drivers are, if that's going to really sell your sponsorship and keep you a viable team in the Cup Series. Remember, all this other talent is already starting the season, right? All this other when Hendrick went to the Papa Playground a few years ago, we were all like, whoa. Didn't we kind of see the full shebang of all the organizations going younger? Well, now Joe Gibbs, they're like the only old team left, right? And so he's going to go through that transition similar to what Hendrick did a few years ago, where none of his drivers were capable or ready to win on a consistent basis. I think Christopher Bell is probably there. But, Ty Gibbs, having him carry an organization right now, I'm just not sure. And that leaves two other valuable seats that could be open in the next couple of years. So, but Michael McDowell, I would love to see him get an opportunity. I feel like he is the Martin Truex Jr. of now. He's bounced around. He's had a so-so career. Give him a chance in a top flight of equipment just to see, man, if this guy can't just come out and raise some eyebrows. If he were put in that 19 car, if Joe Gibbs decided to go another direction, I would take way less money just for the opportunity. I would take John Hunter Nemechek money just being given the opportunity to go back home for Michael McDowell. I believe this guy was actually scouted by Joe Gibbs originally before being pushed over to Michael Waltrip Racing. Of course, that was well before all of the Toyota conspiracies and all that other as well. I believe it was before Joe Gibbs even moved over to Toyota. But if I'm not mistaken, Michael McDowell was one of the very first Toyota racing development, well, not Toyota, Joe Gibbs racing development drivers. But definitely a guy that's been around for a long time. Any other things to add on silly season this week? Austin Hill, big question mark.
I don't know. I think being that it's just midway point, silly season speculation right now is just that, speculation. As we get later in the season and we start to see how the chips are going to fall, we can make more reasoned opinions.
Yeah, reasonable opinions, I guess. All right, well, I think through a lot of that, we went through mid-season surprises and disappointments. One of my key surprises that I would put on this list is Michael McDowell. Like, the guy is just, man, week in, week out, going out and performing. Ty Gibbs, another surprise. I don't think I gave Ty enough credit heading into this year. He's been a lot more consistent, taking care of a lot more. Normally you see a lot of wrecks with rookies. Ty Gibbs has kind of kept his nose clean for the most part of this season.
He has.
The biggest, probably one of the bigger disappointments, Noah Gragson. I knew that taking a risk going to this team was going to be a huge risk for Noah. I've watched Noah over the years. I know that he has some personality issues. I think that a lot of us have that. A lot of us have some self-doubt and some self-esteem issues. I've said I feel that a lot with Noah. I have through most of his career. It kind of made me not like him at first. But then as he found his groove at Junior Motorsports and become a lot more relatable, I feel like maybe the incident with his dad kind of made him have to say, okay, I'm either going to face the public or I'm going to go run and hide. And so he chose to face the public and become kind of this cool little character. But just seeing what that team's having to go through this year, you know, Todd Dillon, I think, struggled really bad in this car last year. Todd Dillon sucks. Of course, I don't believe Noah Gragson sucks one bit, but that car sucks. And so it's been a big disappointment. Really, with that organization in a whole, compared to what Eric Jones was able to do last year versus what that team's doing this year, being that Jimmy Johnson was coming into ownership, you know, I thought he was going to right the ship. I was telling y'all all about how Hendrick did Jimmy dirty, and there was going to be no alliance between Hendrick Engines and Eric Johnson. It's all good because he was still going to get the best. Well, I would have never thought that he was going to go to Toyota, okay? I think I was right on the conspiracy. I had no idea that son of a bitch was going to go to Toyota. So where that leads this organization, I think that can set him kind of – I'm okay with the disappointment because I see things moving in the right direction. I think that this was the case last year with RFK, right? Like, I was disappointed, but at the same time, you could see certain pieces being moved in the right direction. I think Jimmy Johnson and Legacy Motor Club is a little bit further behind than what RFK was rolling into this. But, look, man, they just signed a deal with Toyota. Everything's going to change. There's going to be more money coming in, more manufacturing support coming in. So I think better days are to come for Legacy Motor Club. It's just been kind of disappointing seeing them take such a far step back. Ms. Lee, do you have a couple of maybe surprises and then a couple of maybe disappointments you want to share?
You know, I don't know. I'm still watching, you know, these newer, smaller teams. You know, the Legacy Motorsports team, I thought was going to be in a better position as well. But now, you know, since they made the announcement that they're changing manufacturers, they're certainly not going to get the manufacturer support that they are used to. I mean, that's obvious.
Right. But they're already starting. They are able to sit with TRD. So they are able to plan for the future. So even though this is a sitting duck year, they are already working on the future. They're already a part of the Toyota meetings. They're getting notes. They are getting their team prepared for the transition to next year. All of that is positive activity. All of that is making sure that Legacy is moving in the right direction. You've got a name of Legacy. You can't come in and stink up the show.
Right. Yeah, so that's, you know, that's going to prove to be interesting for next year, for sure.
Any other big surprises as we are into the mid-season now?
No,
maybe
not
how
really.
Maybe how well the car has actually worked this year.
Well, I
grade the car yet?
I think that is something that definitely plays into all stories for all teams. You know, now this is our second year with this car. You know, drivers are more comfortable. The teams are still obviously trying to push the limits, as based on the penalties we've seen. But they're kind of figuring out just how far they can push things. I'm not sure I like this car. I think that it has, while it has evened the playing field, I don't think it allows the creativity of the teams to shine as much. And maybe that's what they were going for. But, you know, I guess it's, you know, it's not 1950 where we're racing, you know, cars that are available to the public with some modifications anymore. You know, the safety innovations that have come across through the years are wonderful, but basically making everyone race the exact same car, I think has, again, taken away the creativity of the teams and the ability of them to be able to find ways to, okay, cheat, but make their cars different from the others.
Yep. Outside of the nose, I mean, that's. I feel like the nose is the only piece of this entire product that has the feature from their actual car. But even though I say that, I feel 100% that this whole car is nothing but a Chevy Camaro with different decals and a different nose on the front of it. And I've seen that firsthand at Talladega when they had the Camaro ZL1, they had a Toyota NASCAR, and they had a Chevrolet NASCAR on display. And like all three cars look completely identical. It quickly leads us over into one of these final topics as we're getting ready to speed through this last final segment here tonight. We want to thank you guys for listening to the show. We're a little short-handed tonight, but that's okay. Me and Miss Lee know how to grab the reins and take care of business, and that's exactly what we've done. The Garage 56 car, there was a whole lot of discussions, a whole lot of talk going in the Le Mans. Most of us don't even care about the Le Mans. I'm a sports car fanatic only for the Rolex 24 hours. I do understand that it's been 100 years of Le Mans, so I appreciate the longevity. But it's just really not my style racing, right? I'm just not really much of a sports car and of course race fan. But I did see all the attention garnered by this Garage 56 car. Miss Lee, as an outsider to the sport from that side of things, what did you feel about the Garage 56 car, and where does it stand with you?
I did not catch the race. I did catch that the Garage 56 car pit crew won the pit crew awards, which was really cool. And the fact that the car finished the race, and they came in like middle of the pack, I believe.
Pretty nice. They had some issues with the drivetrain.
I thought it was an interesting endeavor, and I liked that they tried it, and maybe this gets stock cars more attention across different crowds. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. One of the big terms that I heard all weekend long from all different sides of the racing sports world was there's a NASCAR on the track. Guys, we don't call our cars NASCARs.
Right.
I think it's a Camaro, but, I don't know. But it's a misconception. NASCARs are not NASCARs. NASCAR is the NASCAR organization, and they race cars. But somehow or another, through, I guess, the language barrier or something to that, through most of the weekend, it was referenced to as a NASCAR. So there is a NASCAR out on the racetrack, a NASCAR. So I think it would be a NASCAR car is what it should have been, but they didn't actually add in the double car there. So, what's that? I don't know. I don't think it was really a NASCAR car. Maybe that is the official NASCAR, right? Maybe that is what that is, because that's definitely not the car that we see out on the racetrack on Sundays at the NASCAR sanctioned racetrack. So maybe that's our first NASCAR. So it's good to see that you as well heard a lot of the feedback, a lot of the news. A lot of people this car got a lot of exposure. It got a lot of exposure. A lot of people within the motorsports realm that doesn't necessarily respect NASCAR. Now, they love our numbers. They wish they had our numbers. They wish they had our viewership. They wish they had our fan loyalship. But yet NASCAR always seems to be the butt of everybody's joke in the racing world, including by dirt track drivers. I mean, I don't know. One makes $25 million. The other made a big deal because he raced and won $1 million. I mean, they race for $1 million every year, right? I'm not saying dirt track. Hey, I love dirt track racers. Don't get me wrong. But you can't sit there and think that you're at the top of the world when your driver doesn't make $25 million a year. I mean, it's limited to its capabilities, right? NASCAR can come into a town and sell 50, 60, 80,000 tickets. I haven't seen that at a dirt race. I'm sorry, guys. I just, look, let's give credit where credit's due. I know everybody loves kicking the can. Everybody loves talking shit about NASCAR. But in reality, there was a whole lot of talk this weekend, and that's because NASCAR really is on everybody's minds, right? And they may be the butt of the joke to most of them, but they're still in their mind, and it proved that this weekend, Miss Lee.
Well, you got to keep in mind, most dirt tracks don't have the fan capacity that NASCAR tracks do. So you got to keep that in mind, proportion. I was at Eldora for not the first, the second truck race, and that place was packed, absolutely packed. So there's,
okay, so
go to
we
your
just had the dream.
Track.
It wasn't packed. It wasn't packed for the dream, right? We've seen a bigger fan count for a truck race at Eldora than their staple freaking race of the year, right? Like, there was empty grandstands for the dream. So, I mean, hey, you can kick the can all you want to on NASCAR. The fact of it is, any given Sunday, they sell more tickets than an NFL stadium. So, I mean, it is what it is. But F1 is so this dominant racing series, world racing cars, world rally cars, or the WRC, whatever the hell that stands for. They want to look it's a NASCAR driver. Even the motorcycle drivers are like, whatever. Hey, NASCAR, if it's in your mind, we already got you sold. All right, let's move on. Chris Buescher, big time, big finish. Taz Taylor, kudos to you, my friend, for pointing out Chris Buescher's silent but lethal stats rolling into road courses. I would have never circled Chris Buescher as a top road course racer. A fourth-place finish. I believe between him and Kozlowski this year, they have a combined total of like 9 top 5 finishes, which is surpassing any total in the last 10 years, I think, within this organization. RFK, once again on our radar. I know that we've talked about RFK every week for 5 weeks, at least for 5 weeks. Every show we've had, we've talked about RFK racing. There is a reason for that. I am not just a fanboy. The statistics are showing you every week why we continue to talk about Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. Chris Buescher, 4th place finish, sitting high and mighty, 12th in points right now, knocking on the door for a win. This team is consistent. There's a lot to talk about. A whole lot of good things going on over at Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. Miss Lee, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I will add that. Nobody had Chris Buescher on their radar, but I watched Chris Buescher win an Xfinity race at Mid-Ohio, which is the road course. So, yes, he was on my radar.
Cool. And that's the valuable content that you get right here at Race Chat Live, because I knew Kyle Larson was going to wind up at Hendrick Motorsports before he did. I didn't know how he was going to get there, and we all argued about how he was going to get there, and we were all wrong about how he got there. But I had some people saying that it would never happen, and it did happen. And Miss Lee, she knew Chris Buescher was a good road course racer. I was sitting here last weekend like, oh, y'all are just pulling my leg, right? This is just stats making it look like that. And then here we are, 4th place finish at Sonoma. You better have Chris Buescher rolling into your next road course race. That's all the advice I'm going to give you right now and here today. But, yes, RFK is moving in the right direction. Both of these drivers seem to be knocking at the door. Talk of moving or bringing in another charter. I think all that should be hushed for now. Let's get these 2 cars rolling. Let's get you guys into victory lane a couple of times. Then we can talk about a 3rd car, or even possibly Brett Keselowski retiring in the next couple of years. But right now, I just want to talk about performance, and performance-wise, RFK Racing, top of the charts. Keep your eye on them, especially coming the next road course racing. We're coming into Nashville, a concrete place. I know Brett Keselowski's always been really fast at concrete racetracks. He's going to be one to watch. I would put him in my contender category if Taz Taylor was going to do those picks tonight. Last and not least on the agenda tonight, let's talk about the schedule planning. Get to put out a schedule. And let me tell you something about what I know. First of all, there has already been a few races where you would generally get next year's renewal, and there has not been certain renewals sent out, one of them being the Bristol Dirt Race. Now, it is being rumored that Bristol may be replaced on the schedule with North Wilkesboro. If that is the case, I find that to be blasphemy. We do not need to take out short tracks for other short tracks, okay? That's not the way to handle this, okay? Take out a freaking road course, take your coda and shove it up your or whatever, take the Roval, shove it up the can, okay? We don't need it. Take Texas completely off the schedule. That's great. Doesn't bother me. But do not, by any means, take out a short track racetrack and replace it with another short track racetrack. We need as many short track races as we can get. Miss Lee, what are your thoughts on the updated schedule? They say it could be August, maybe September, but definitely by this time any other year we would have had next year's schedule. Should we be expecting major changes?
Well, it appears that way. I did see a headline. I did not read any of the stories. If anything, in my opinion, we should trade some of the mile-and-a-halfers for more short tracks, or even, and I know everybody hates this, but even more road courses. The mile-and-a-halfers, the cookie-cutter tracks are the ones that, in my opinion, at least with, and especially with this car, don't have as much appeal to me. And I was heartbroken when they took away Kentucky. because I had such a good time when we were there for the spring and fall races. But I think we need more variety rather than an emphasis on the mile and a halfers.
Well, I mean, I know not Atlanta. I know California is a big question mark. I know the Coliseum race is a big question mark, and I want to bring the Clash back. I want to bring the Clash back to Daytona. I want to have the Clash being, the typical pre-Daytona race, not on a road course, on the big track. I want that to come back. I want to see the California race. I want to see it the All-Star race. I want that to be our All-Star race. And whether or not that's racing that race at the very beginning of the year or a typical time in May, I'm not sure how a West Coast run in May would do, but, we used to race Sonoma in May, so maybe that could be something. I know Sonoma's kind of been the drop track for Fox, so I'm not sure how that would work. But I also have heard that the Brickyard's coming back, and so that takes away the Indy road course race, and that's great. Like, you just eliminated two road course races that I didn't want too fond of in the first place. All right, and if you bring the All-Star race, if you make the Coliseum race the All-Star race, that opens the door for North Wilkesboro to be plugged in to the schedule. Now, here's the mess up. Basically, NASCAR would have to lease out that California date to Bruton Smith or Marcus Smith and SCI Racing. What is it? Shit. Speedway Racing Incorporated, whatever it is. Yeah, SMI. Yeah, Speedway Motorsports Incorporated. So if they leased out that spot, that date on the calendar, then I could see North Wilkesboro being plugged right into the schedule without a hitch. Whether or not NASCAR is willing to do that, whether they want to take that track or take that date and give it to another racetrack, possibly the Coliseum race, I'm not really sure. I don't know how that's going to go. I do know that the new TV network contract is going to have a big, effect on how and where these races are raced and when they're raced. How much of an effect, I'm still unsure. Who gets where, what gets replaced, because I don't feel like next year would be the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro if they plug that in and make it a point-paying race. But I heard, we need to turn the expedition race into an exhibition race into a cup race. But Taz, and of course you argued that there's no pit stops, right? So it'd be really hard to turn that into a points-paying race. So, here we are. A new schedule's being made, new plans for next season. I'm not sure I have a true wish list. I do want to see a couple of these road courses replaced. Miss Lee wants to see some of the mile and a half redone. It's sad. Kentucky Speedway. That, we focus so much on the heart of America. And, you've got the Gateway. You got the Chicago race. You've got the Mid-Ohio racetrack. You got the racetrack up in Wisconsin. You got Michigan. But Kentucky was kind of like still a southern state race, right? Kansas is over there as well. But Kentucky was still kind of like a more of a mid-eastern, not a Midwestern, a mid-eastern type race. And you see the kind of the big circle that you draw when you zone into Kentucky Speedway. You see, like, that's a big geographical area there. And Miss Lee, really, a lot of people don't really consider how close you were, and people of Ohio were, to the Kentucky Speedway, right? I mean, that was y'all's go-to racetrack.
We sat down and we plotted out that year what races were within a so many hour radius. And Kentucky was, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they were no, that was the very beginning when Xfinity started racing at Mid-Ohio. So that one was definitely on our radar and on our list, and we went. But Kentucky was the closest other racetrack for us to go to. So travel-wise, logistically, financially, Kentucky was, the best next place for us to go. I think Michigan was the next, but it would have been, I think, an hour further or something like that.
Right. But it's also across the peninsula, so.
Right.
Like there's a humongous lake that separates Ohio from Michigan, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you can't just jump over to the state of Michigan.
Right. So the loss of Kentucky was big. And again, like I said, it's another mile and a half. So I get that. But do you know that land is unoccupied? There's nothing there. I mean, the track is still there, but they're not doing anything with it now.
Right.
It's
kind of the resemblance of Texas World Speedway. We know the fate of Texas World Speedway. It became a parking lot, and then it was dismantled. And that just seems to be the way of the world these days. Some things are forgotten about. Maybe 20 years from now, it'll be a historic reawakening for Kentucky Speedway. And who knows, maybe there'll actually be some shit around there by then. Because I think the biggest disappointment was that was a potential investment by the state of Kentucky, and they thought that it would build this enterprise and everything around it will come. That's one of the few places that has yet to happen. That has not come to fruition there at Kentucky Speedway.
You are absolutely correct. There is absolutely nothing around it. There was a gas station maybe 5 miles away from the track. And that was it.
Wow. Well, Miss Lee, it is 8:30. I don't see any point in pushing this any further. We're only 15 minutes away from Taz's hot pick. And Taz is not with us tonight, and we're not racing next week, so I guess there won't be any hot picks. But we want to thank our race fans for joining us here tonight in this shorter version of Race Chat Live. But nonetheless, we still covered the hot topic. I'm pretty satisfied, Ms. Lee. Do you have anything to add to tonight's show?
The only other thing I can say is if you're looking for racing, ARCA Racing at Berlin Saturday night, I think 8 p.m. ET, not 100% sure, check the time, but it's going to be on Fox Sports 1 as well as Flow Racing.
I'm excited about the return to Nashville. I feel like that was one of the, Dale Jr. made it like, oh, we shouldn't go back there because it's really not that great of a facility, and Nashville Fairgrounds is a lot better. Well, Dale Jr., you were wrong. We had a great time in Nashville last year. I'm looking forward to being there. Well, not being there personally, but the series returning to that facility again this year. I feel like last year it put on a pretty good race. Looking forward to seeing what that might look like again this year. Hey, it's cool to resurrect these old racetracks and get the crowd back. And Nashville's a booming city right now. I just was there a couple of weeks ago, and I'm definitely making my plans already to return. It's definitely a lot cleaner, a lot better smelling style type of New Orleans atmosphere. It's music everywhere. Broadway is amazing. And they hold two really big tracks that are pretty significant in NASCAR history. So we'll go back to Nashville in 2 weeks. I think we'll be off next week. So make sure y'all tune in to the replay. But all in all, thank you for a great night, Miss Lee. Thank you for joining me and giving me somebody to talk to. As for Greg, he's still out. Taz, hopefully he's doing okay. But as for the night, man, thank you very much. Go check out our podcast at all the podcast drops, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, you name it, or you can find us on 110 Nation Facebook. I tried to make it through it. Facebook page, and you'll see where the pod page is, and then you'll follow the links. Thank you, and have a great week, the next couple of weeks, and we'll see y'all on the return in 2 weeks. Ms. Lee, have a great week.
You too, Chris. Thanks to our sponsors, Carolina Sports and Bears Bullish Market as well.
All right, thank you. See y'all in a couple of weeks. Bye.